I'm Marcy Winograd with Medea Benjamin to kick off Code Pink Radio with our segment, relatively new segment, Empire on the Rocks. Medea, are you ready for the quiz?
So we're doing a quiz today, Marcy.
Yes. In fact, if you score well in the top 1%, and you're the only student of the class, we will do it each time. So
Oh, okay. I
quiz,
hope I get a prize.
I have to think about that one. Okay. The quiz is called One Truth, Two Lies. Are you ready to play One Truth, Two Lies?
I am totally ready.
Here we
Go
go.
for it, Marcy.
Number one, when this governor was asked, do you take money from AIPAC? He squirmed and said, that's interesting. 10 times he said, that's interesting. Who was this governor? A, Texas Governor Greg Abbott. B, California Governor Gavin Newsom. C, New York Governor Kathy Hochul. What do you think, Medea?
Well, I would probably say all of the above because they probably all squirm about AIPAC money, but I did see that hysterical video clip, so I will say California Governor Gavin Newsom.
Ding, 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 you got it. Let's watch Newsom, who is all but a declared candidate for president, squirm when podcaster Sean Ryan asked Newsom if he is receiving money from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee.
Interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC. And it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting.
Why?
Why did I say that? Not relevant to my day-to-day life.
Okay.
Which is just interesting.
Listen.
It's interesting you say that. JPAC perhaps more, but AIPAC less and less.
Okay. Fair enough.
Which is just interesting.
What's interesting about it?
That it's just interesting as you bring up AIPAC that it hasn't been part of. I'm just reflecting quite openly and honestly. Hasn't been part of the day-to-day.
Yeah. The only reason.
What was your reaction, Medea, as you watched that?
Oh, I love it. I love watching him squirm, and it's just so disingenuous to talk about. He hasn't talked about AIPAC in years. I mean, AIPAC is all over the place, and we know that every politician is hounded by AIPAC, which is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It buys politicians, and I am sure that Gavin Newsom has just a bevy of AIPAC handlers who are constantly checking in with him. But Marcy, he does mention JPAC. So what is JPAC?
Yes, JPAC is the Jewish Public Affairs Committee, which is a lobby group in California, and he is tethered at the hip to this lobby group. They push legislation primarily focused on public education to suppress dissent, enhance rules about time, place, and manner for protests on colleges. JPAC, are very involved in pushing out legislation, which the governor has signed, to expand Holocaust education, Holocaust and genocide education, HGE they call it, to legitimize the state of Israel, to say, Israel, of course we need Israel as a Jewish apartheid state. This lobby group has also pushed out a bill, most recently the governor signed, that has just enraged educators because it establishes an anti-Semitism prevention coordinator, in quotes, to basically police instruction that will most likely be based on a definition that conflates criticism of Zionism with Israel, and to pursue teachers, to elevate complaints to the State Department of Education. It's really terrible, and teachers will have to refuse to cooperate with this kind of policing. So I appreciated that Gavin Newsom did not want that question thrown at him. And I was even surprised he brought up JPAC, but he did.
It's very interesting, I would say.
Yeah, 10 times. Okay, number 2. Here's the next question. This mayor of a large city called for a general strike to protest the ICE raids, federal troops ordered to Chicago, hint there, and Republican heist of taxpayer money to distribute wealth upwards. Who was this mayor? A, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. B, Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. C, Jacksonville, Florida Mayor Donna Deegan. What do you think?
Well, that's an easy one because Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson was on fire on No King's Day. I would say of everybody who spoke throughout the country, he had the most inspiring, fiery speech. To call for a general strike is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so let's watch him right now. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson on fire.
If my ancestors as slaves can lead the greatest general strike in the history of this country, taking it to the ultra-rich and big corporations, we can do the same today. I'm calling on black people, white people, brown people, Asian people, immigrants, gay people from around this country to stand up against tyranny and to send a clear message to the ultra-rich and big corporations. We are going to make them pay their fair share in taxes to fund our schools, to fund jobs, to fund healthcare, to fund transportation. Democracy will live on because of this generation. Are you ready to take it to the courts and to the streets?
Basically are, right? When we're seeing just the depth of the attacks that are happening, trying to roll back all those gains that were won through past struggle, you know, that you were talking about. And they're not going to win. They're not going to do it. This crowd out here is showing why they're not going to do it.
It's our money. It's supposed to go to us. And so when we go on a general strike, we're basically saying we want our money to go back to us. We want our power to go back to us, not to these fascists.
Go Chicago. What do you think? Do you think Trump has watched this video?
I would think so, but who knows? It is just so fiery and exciting. And, you know, Trump ordered at least 500 National Guard troops from Texas and Illinois to be deployed to Chicago. The Chicago mayor doesn't want it. The Chicago people doesn't want it. The Illinois governor doesn't want it. And a lower court has blocked the move. So there's a real fight going on in Chicago, and it's very exciting to see the people of Chicago fighting back.
Exactly. And you're in DC where he has stationed federal troops. Tell us about it. What's it like?
Well, you know, it's a funny thing, Marcy, because I feel like I'm the frog that's in the boiling water. You know, at first when they came, I was really upset and said, "What are these troops doing here?" Every time I saw them, I would say something to them like, you know, "We don't want armed guards, armed troops on our streets. That's not the role of the military. You should go home." And now I see them and I just kind of smile at them because what I find is they don't want to be here either. And they really don't do much except strut around with their weapons. The mayor has been cowed by Trump because, you know, the federal government really can mess up the city of Washington, D.C., cutting off federal funds. So she feels very cowed and has, quote, welcomed these troops and told them they can even stay. So it's a shame that they're here. I know that in every neighborhood at 7 o'clock at night, we get out and we bang our pots and pans and we say, you know, troops off our streets. But hopefully this won't last very long. And thanks to the courts, we can get some relief.
Absolutely. Number 3, Israel broke the ceasefire in Gaza, killing at least 26 people, cutting off humanitarian aid after what happened? Okay, A, Israel launched a wave of attacks on Gaza after accusing Palestinian militants of attacking its forces across ceasefire lines. B, Netanyahu claimed Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman told him to break the ceasefire. I made that one up. C, an IDF truck ran over one of its own landmines. Actually, as I look at this, there might be 2 correct answers here.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think this is a trick question because Israel did launch a wave of attack accusing Palestinian militants of attacking its forces. And the real reason, or the reason that there were 2 IDF soldiers who died is because an IDF truck ran over one of its own landmines. So A and C. Now, in terms of Fetterman telling Netanyahu to break the ceasefire, that could be true as well.
Well, he might have wished it. I wish, well, I won't say, but you know what I think about Fetterman. Okay, Next question, number 4. What is the name of the military leader who quit, presumably over Trump's lethal attacks on Venezuelan boats in international waters? This guy has been in the military for a long time. So here are the possibilities. A, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. B, Colonel Ann Wright. C, Admiral Alvin Hosley of the Southern Command.
Well, unfortunately, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, is still there. Colonel Ann Wright already had resigned around the war in Iraq, so it's got to be Admiral Alvin Hosley of the Southern Command, who was only in the job for less than 1 year, has resigned and hasn't said it publicly, but there certainly are a lot of rumors that he resigned because he's not in favor of what the military was asked to do in blowing up these boats in the waters outside of Venezuela and Colombia.
Yes, Hosley, he's the head of the U.S. Southern Command. He's supposed to stick around until December. I don't know if that's going to happen, but he was responsible for military operations in Central and South America and the Caribbean. So if Trump is ordering boats of civilians to be blown up in the Caribbean, I imagine Hosley was not down for that. Of course, no reasons were given for why he wants out. He wants to exit the military. Hegseth just said, thank you, something like that on Twitter. All right, number 5, this is a little different. This is a true or false. The Nobel Peace Prize, I'm choking as I say that, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Maria Machado, a woman who supports Trump's arbitrary judicial executions on the high seas, who wants to privatize Venezuela's oil. That's a nice way of saying what, I don't know, rape the country for capitalism, and has appealed to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to lead an Israeli invasion of Venezuela. True or false?
It's unbelievable that it is true. It should be false. In fact, when I heard about it, I thought, this can't be true. But these days, there are so many things like that that you think can't be true actually come out to be true. And she did thank Trump because, you know, Trump was a bit upset that it wasn't him. And he said, this Maria Machado, nobody even knows who she is, which of course is true. But she made sure to thank Trump. And there are a lot of Trump supporters who were disappointed, but Maria Machado is going to use her Nobel Peace Prize to push for war with Venezuela. So it's a funny use of a Nobel Peace Prize, isn't it?
It certainly isn't, well, funny, it's horrific. I think we need to stop calling it the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, Trump calls the Department of Defense, formerly known as the Department of War, and I think we should now call the Nobel War Prize, because that's really what it has become, starting with giving it to Henry Kissinger, right? After millions were killed, the U.S. killed millions of people in Vietnam, and Kissinger, he gets the Nobel Peace Prize. And now this woman?
Well, yes, at a time also when there are so many great people who should have gotten the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm thinking particularly of the journalists in Gaza and the doctors in Gaza who have been for 2 years risking their lives to save people's lives, to get us the news. There was a lot of global clamor to award the Nobel Peace Prize to them, but alas, they picked somebody who wants war.
Yes, and speaking of war, let's take a look at a video of these attacks, the U.S. attacks on Venezuelans. It's one thing to talk about it, but when you actually see what's happening with these missile strikes, it's just devastating. It's so frightening. Now, I want to play a clip of what Trump had to say when he was asked a hard question at a press conference about his assassinations of civilians from Venezuela. We don't know who they are. We don't know. He claims they're narco-terrorists. What? There's no evidence.
Mr. President, on Venezuelan votes, I want to ask you, why not have the Coast Guard stop them, which it is empowered by law to do? You know, this way you can confirm who's on the boat and ensure that they're doing what you suspect.
Because we've been doing that for 30 years, and it has been totally ineffective. They have faster boats. Some of these boats are seriously, I mean, they're world-class speedboats, but they're not faster than missiles.
So there's Trump trying to legitimize what is totally illegitimate. What's been the reaction from Venezuela?
Well, Venezuela, the people of Venezuela, whether they support Maduro or not, do not want the United States to come in and do regime change. You know, people have seen what happens when the U.S. intervenes, whether it's in Iraq or Libya or Afghanistan, or the history of U.S. intervention in Latin America has always been horrific. What the people of Venezuela want is a lifting of the sanctions that have harmed the Venezuelan population, that have led to so much suffering. That would be something that would be helpful. But meanwhile, Trump is couching this all as part of drug trafficking, naming Maduro as head of some drug cartel that most Venezuelans have never even heard of, putting a bounty on his head of $10 million. And this is all for regime change. It's very dangerous, it's very scary, and hopefully that we'll be able to stop it.
That's right. And as you mentioned, there's a long history of U.S. attempts to either topple a government or actually topple one. I mean, I was in college when the United States toppled the socialist president, democratic socialist president of Chile, Salvador Allende, which led to all sorts of horrific crimes against the people who supported Allende, torture and assassinations. So we have to really be on alert and be speaking out. And you said that you're walking the halls of Congress now, right? To try to stop this. What Trump
Yeah,
has
well, first
threatened
let's say
war.
what the real motivation is for regime change. The U.S. wants to have access to Venezuela's oil reserves, which are the largest in the world, followed by Saudi Arabia and Iran. And the oil industry in Venezuela has been nationalized. And of course, the U.S. would like to see that reversed. The interesting thing in Congress, Marcy, is that all of the Democrats, except for one, John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, have come out on record in a vote being against unauthorized U.S. attacks on Venezuela. And there are two members of the Republican Senate, Rand Paul and Lisa Murkowski, who have come out as well. And there'll be another upcoming vote that we have been pushing more of the Republicans to get on board, because it is totally unconstitutional and because it goes totally against this whole idea of America first. And the Republican base, you know, they really do believe in this America first idea. Why are we getting involved in these overseas adventures that really have no benefit to the United States and could lead us into a very damning war? So we are using both the constitutional arguments as well as the America First arguments to see if we could win over a couple of more Republicans so that this legislation would pass and really put a brake on President Trump and the people around him, because let's face it, Trump, you know, one day says one thing, one day says another thing. He wants a Nobel Peace Prize. Does he really want a war in Venezuela? But unfortunately, there are people like Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who do want to see a war with Venezuela, do want to topple the government of Venezuela, and has been in cahoots with the right-wing Venezuelan Americans as well as Cuban Americans who would like to see this happen. You know, they think if they could overthrow Venezuela, then they could go on to overthrow the governments of Cuba and Nicaragua.
Yeah, I can imagine Trump turning to Marco Rubio right before a press conference and saying, "Oh, give me the Cliff Notes. What am I supposed to say?" Because this is Marco Rubio's dream, right? To have a president installed who's going to execute the war that Rubio has wanted against Cuba and Venezuela and all sorts of left-leaning governments in Latin America. So from Venezuela to Colombia, Trump and Marco Rubio are on the warpath. Let's take a look at this video.
President Trump ramping up pressure on Colombia, saying in a new post online he's cutting off aid to the country and calling the Colombian president an illegal drug dealer, in his words. That leader has accused the U.S. of killing a fisherman in a strike on a boat this week. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth posting a new video today showing a strike on what he says was a boat operated by a Colombian rebel group that the Trump administration says was carrying drugs.
And now let's go to a cut of Gustavo Petro, Colombia's president, talking about Trump's extrajudicial killings. I believe a Colombian was killed as a result.
The young people killed by missiles in the Caribbean did not belong to the Tren de Aragua. Perhaps nobody here even knows their names, nor to Hamas. They were from the Caribbean, possibly Colombians. And if they were Colombians, with apologies to those who dominate the United Nations, criminal proceedings should be opened against those U.S. officials responsible, including the top official who gave the order, President Trump.
Petro, he has been really outspoken, hasn't he? Not only about Trump's recklessness, his violence on the high seas, but also Gaza.
Well, yes, during the UN sessions, he came out and addressed a group of us outside there, saying that there should be a protection force sent to Gaza to protect the civilians, and that he himself would go. He also said that the U.S. military shouldn't obey unlawful orders by the U.S. president, and that did not sit well with Trump.
I can imagine. Well, Trump, he wants to create not only wars with Venezuela and the Palestinians. He says he's for a ceasefire, but we know what's really happening here. But to a large extent, he wants to extract as many resources as he can while he is in the White House. And now we're going to turn to Argentina. Talking about Latin America here, we talked about Venezuela, Colombia. Well, after promising to end foreign entanglements, America first and all of that, now Trump has proposed a financial rescue bailout plan for his friend in Argentina. He wants to give $20 billion to keep the right-wing government of Argentine President Milei afloat when Milei is in big trouble. He has been accused of corruption. He was involved in a scandal with cryptocurrency, and Trump's waiting to see what's going to happen with that. But in the meantime, yeah, here's $20 billion. Let's take a look. Let's see what Trump has to say about this.
I'm with this man because his philosophy is correct.
U.S. President Donald Trump expressed his support for Argentina's President Javier Milei during their meeting at the White House Tuesday. The visit comes days after the U.S. agreed to provide a major financial lifeline to the South American nation. The meeting also occurred ahead of Argentina's midterm legislative elections.
We're going to work very much with the president. We think he's going to win. He should win. And if he does win, we're going to be very helpful. And if he doesn't win, we're not going to waste our time.
Trump's remarks rattled Argentine markets that had previously been buoyed by the support package recently announced by U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, the centerpiece of which is a $20 billion currency swap with Argentina's central bank, exchanging stable U.S. dollars for volatile pesos. Bessent said in the meeting that the support package depended on the continuance of economic policies favored by the Trump administration.
We're confident that the president's party will and the coalition will do well in the election, and this aid is predicated on robust policies, and going back to the failed Peronist policies would cause a U.S. rethink.
The economic lifeline for Argentina marks an unusual move for the U.S., particularly under an administration that has largely stayed away from major foreign interventions. The White House has framed the deal as a strategic effort to stabilize a key regional ally. But it has drawn criticism at home, including from Democratic lawmakers who have accused Trump of prioritizing foreign bailouts and investor protections while the U.S. government remains shut down.
Medea, what do you make of this love fest between Trump and Milei?
Well, they're both right-wingers. There's been a really close relationship between Milei and Trump going back to Trump's first term. And this idea of a bailout is really a political move. It has nothing to do with Trump caring about the Argentine people. But it's a way to give a boost to Milei in these upcoming midterm elections that are happening October 26th. And Trump is getting a lot of pushback from this here in the United States. You know, we just talked about the base of the Republican Party asking, do we really want to get into a war with Venezuela? They're also asking, why are we giving this bailout to this country, Argentina, when there are so many needs back home? And the ones that are particularly upset about this are the farmers in the United States, who see that this bailout is really going to help farmers in Argentina, who are their competitors. And in fact, just recently, we see China buying soybeans from Argentina instead of buying them from the United States. So there is a lot of pushback against what Trump is doing. We don't know what it's going to mean inside Argentina on the elections. Is it going to be helpful? And people will say, oh, we need this money from the US, let's vote for Milei's party. Or will they say, we really don't want this kind of intervention from the US president, let's not vote for Milei's party? That is still to be seen.
Yes, and it's really an outrage when you think about 20 billion to prop up a right-winger in Argentina who's going to extract more from his people with an austerity plan. And yet 70 million people in this country don't have adequate health care, adequate health insurance to cover their health care. You know, when you start looking into this and digging deeper, there seems to be this, what shall we say, a club, Trump, Milei, Machado, Rubio, and Elon Musk. Might as well throw Larry Ellison in there too, who's buying TikTok or will have a major stake in a buyout. Because what is this about? Elon Musk, he's all for this. And I never heard Trump talking about Argentina before Elon Musk got involved in a big way. But Argentina has a lot of lithium. And guess what? Lithium powers those Tesla vehicles, the batteries. And Musk wants to make sure that Argentina is not regulated and there's no nationalization of the lithium industry, because that might make it harder for him to get what he wants at the price he wants. What do you think?
Well, remember, Elon Musk and Trump are not the best of friends anymore. So maybe that blow up between them could help to blow up some of these machinations on the part of the Trump administration. But in general, of course, what the US is doing now is trying to find a way to push China out of Latin America, because China has become a major trading partner in Latin America. But so much of what the Trump is doing is actually pushing countries closer to China. You look at Colombia and the deterioration of relations there, well, China will benefit from that. You look at Venezuela, China will benefit from that. And we already talked about how even in Argentina, China is benefiting by the propping up of the Argentine economy, and will buy the soy and other resources from Argentina. So I don't think the US strategy is very well thought out.
No, I agree. It is not well thought out. I think that we're watching like this huge scandal right now of theft from the working people of this country to prop up these billionaires. And so we have to be ever vigilant, right, Medea? Not only in the halls of Congress and on the street, but also as we view social media, as it is increasingly bought out by billionaires. So we know the CODEPINK audience is on high alert, and we have to stay on high alert.
Well, and yes, let's also just say that the people of Latin America show us from decades and decades of struggle that they have been out on the streets, they have been protesting, they might lose some elections and then gain some later, but they're not going to sit by and watch a U.S. takeover of their precious natural resources. So we have to be in solidarity with the people of Latin America.
That's right. Thank you so much. Medea Benjamin, co-founder of CODEPINK, has been with me, Marcy Winograd, for Empire on the Rocks, a segment of CODEPINK Radio. More coming up.